Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RBC Presents the Walrus Talks Social Impact. My name is Shelley Ambrose. I'm the Executive Director of the Walrus Foundation and the publisher of the Walrus magazine. We're thrilled to be back in Halifax here at the Spatz Theatre at the foot of Citadel Hill on such a beautiful day. I can't believe you even came. You should be home barbecuing or something. We are here gathered on the traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and we are grateful to be in a place with such a rich history and a bright future. The Walrus is all about the future. This little optimistic project called the Walrus was started almost 15 years ago. In fact, next year is our 15th anniversary, and our goal is to create forums for conversations about matters vital to Canadians. One way we do that is by publishing the Walrus magazine. Hands up if you know what the Walrus magazine is. You're holding one in your hand. Come on, people. Everybody should know by now. Yes, okay. Hands up if you subscribe to the magazine. Please don't lie to me. Those are my favorite people. See me afterwards and I'll buy you a drink. Okay? It's that easy. Tonight is our 85th Walrus Talks. We started them 6 years ago. They go all across the country. Hands up if you've been to a Talks before. Welcome back. Hands up if you're new. Let's welcome the newbies. Wow. Hello, new people. That's fantastic. So for those new to us, yes, we have a magazine. Yes, we have the Walrus Talks, and of course we have the walrus.ca, but what we really are, all of those things in aggregate, is a place for you to read, talk, listen, and share ideas for the future of Canada and the future of the world. Why not? In all things Walrus, you'll find well-told stories on everything from politics to culture, the environment to technology. And everything we do is meant to spark a conversation between the Walrus and with you and your community. And you're here, so thank you for heeding the call. And it means now that you're here that you are Walri, which we know is not a word, but we use it anyway. And now each of you is a Walri. And the Walrus community, Walri share a couple of things in common. So if you don't know your neighbors that you're sitting next to, this is what you have in common. Walri have this tendency to think about stuff. They actually do. And they have this tendency to believe that our minds are like a parachute. They work nominally better when open. That's what you share with your neighbors. So the Walrus is not left-wing, it's not right-wing. As you all know, a walrus has no wings. We are an independent entity with no one point of view. We have an educational mandate, and we're governed by a board of directors, a national advisory committee, and an education review committee. I think one of our education review committee members, Stephen Kimber, Prof at King's. Are you here, Stephen? Hello, Stephen, education review committee member in the flesh. Thank you for coming. So this is something I'm going to tell you that until recently I never thought I had to say out loud, but our journalism is fact-based. Yes, it is. It's absolutely true. Our educational mandate is real. We have real live human fact checkers. And we also train future leaders in the media, and we have a very unique editorial fellowship program at the Walrus designed to ensure that the future of journalism, not just at the Walrus, is bright. And our journalism and training programs are supported by events like these, and circulation, advertising, sponsorship, charitable donations, and partnerships. Partnerships are really important to us. There's no way we could do the work that we do without partners like RBC and the RBC Foundation, one of our longest standing and most beloved partners and funders. They are a lead donor in our Optimistic Canadians program. What's an optimistic Canadian, Shelley? An optimistic Canadian is a person or entity that it makes a 5-year pledge to the Walrus, which we think is pretty optimistic in times like these. So we're pretty happy with RBC. They also support emerging artists, which so do we. So whether it's emerging artists and leaders, investment, youth, health, arts, culture, water, financial literacy, RBC supports all of those things. So please join me in welcoming, if you look at your program, I'm going to say a different name. Please join me in welcoming Vice President, Commercial Financial Services, RBC Royal Bank, Cecilia Moore.
Thank you, Shelley. Yes, if you looked at the program, I could only hope to be as good as my friend Tracy Sarloos, who has the flu today. So she couldn't be here. I'm thrilled to be. I was here in the audience, scheduled to attend. This is a very exciting talk, and my husband was right. He told me there was a magazine, and I agreed. I argued with him, actually. So I've learned something new today, so I'll be taking that magazine home and possibly eating a little bit of crow when I get him back. But we had different areas of this organization down pat, so I'm very happy to be here, and I'm happy to see that I can barely see you guys, but it's very packed in here, which is great. So we're thrilled to be a sponsor. We made the commitment for a period of time, and we're thrilled to be here. And when you hear the word social impact, do you think about changing social systems, or do you think about disrupting the status quo? Is it just a fancy word of saying find new ideas and make the world better? Or does the social impact define our reason for being, what we want to achieve, and the values that we stand for? As Canada navigates this unprecedented time of opportunity and innovation and challenge, RBC is focused on generating awareness on issues facing Canadian youth. Shelley had made mention before, we support a lot of causes, but youth is a big focus for us right now. Young Canadians are facing challenges as they transition between education and the workforce, due to a lack of preparedness primarily, and a lack of access to support and resources to get that transition done smoothly. Canada's future prosperity depends on our ability to harness the energy, skills, innovation, and optimism of our youth to make their contribution to the future success of our country. They have the ambition and the potential, and if provided with the opportunity, they can do almost anything. They can transform our social and economic systems and shape a better future. Focusing on our youth is our North Star, and it guides everything we do at RBC. And it's thoughtful conversations about our world and how to make it better that we believe will drive social impact. And that includes conversations like tonight. I can't wait to hear. I had the benefit of sitting backstage with all of our speakers tonight, so I got the small pitch of their speeches tonight. Can't wait to hear it. I can't wait to hear what they have to say about this very critical topic. And without further ado, I think we should just get the night started. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cecilia. So, social impact, what is it? What does it mean? I'm not going to answer that question. The way the Walrus Talks works is that we offer you 7 perspectives on social impact. And at the Walrus, our goal is that you emerge from this room into the post-talks reception, to which you are all invited, thinking, I never thought of it that way. We don't like to tell you what to think, we just want you to think. And here's how it works. Each talker, you all have a program in your hand to get it out. We keep the lights up, and you're gonna have to follow along, because I do not pop up here like a jack-in-the-box and read the program to you. No. Each speaker, there are 7 of them, they have 7 minutes each. They know this. They will each come up and introduce themselves. The front of your program, the speakers' names are there. They're in speaker order. Flip it over, and those are their bios. So you can learn a little bit about them. And you have a little bit of work to do. So you will see and hear 7 talkers in a row. And once we're finished, I'll come back up here for a minute, and then we will spill out into the reception. So just before I let them get underway, I'd like to thank each of them in advance. Thank you very much in advance to the founder and president of Roots of Empathy, Mary Gordon, to the executive director of the Community Foundation of Nova Scotia, Angela Bishop, to the founder, Plato Testing, Keith McIntosh, to the president, Helping Nature Heal Inc., Rosemary Lonas, co-founder, Common Good Solutions, David Upton, and the manager, he brought his fan. That is a smart thing to do. Always bring your fan. Thanks, Mom. That's what he said. Thank you to the manager of Dartmouth North Community Food Center, Deborah Dickey, and writer and filmmaker, King's College's Sylvia D. Hamilton. Thank you all for coming. Let us begin.
Well, thank you, Shelley. I'm Mary Gordon, and a very good evening to all the friends of Walrus out there. I'm delighted to be part of this event, social impact event, and I'm going to tell you about how Roots of Empathy is changing the world child by child. Our empathy-based program started more than 2 decades ago, and it started in one province of Canada, and it has grown to every province of Canada in English and French, particularly available to our First Nations, Inuit and Métis peoples. We're sometimes called a disruptive innovation, and when I first heard that I was a bit affronted. But now I'm charmed, because to be able to be breaking cycles in an education system is something that I'm quite happy to sign up for. So how does this program work? You can see up here a picture of a tiny baby in a classroom. What we do is quite unconventional. We find a newborn baby in the neighborhood of a school. We train, of course the baby comes with the mother or father or both, and we train an instructor, and that family and the instructor visit with the classroom of children over the course of the school year. And the Roots of Empathy instructor coaches the children to observe the baby's intentions, to take the perspective of this wee little baby who can't walk or talk. And perspective taking is the cognitive aspect of empathy. And that's why we teach the children perspective taking skills. And it's also the very first stage of any conflict resolution. But the affective part of empathy is emotion. And we basically live in an emotionally illiterate society, and you shouldn't just go to school to learn to read, you should go to school to learn to relate. And we teach children unabashedly emotional literacy. They are guided to observe the baby's emotional cues, and of course the little baby's body is completely unfiltered, a theater of emotion. So as this unfolds on the green blanket, the follow-up lessons allow the instructor to flip that experiential learning to the children's own experience. When was a time when you felt frustrated like the baby? When was a time when you were so confused you couldn't find which way was up or down? And what happens is that the children do develop empathy. They develop it brilliantly. But usually people think, oh, well, why don't we just teach it at home or teach it at school? But empathy is not something that can be taught in conventional instructional ways. It's something that is caught rather than taught. And ideally, children do catch it at home. We are innately predisposed to be empathic, was my belief, and it turns out to be right that neuroscience is caught up with my guess, and by golly. And then the other part of it is we have this first year of life where the relationship between the parent and the baby is crucial. And if that goes awry for any reason, the parent isn't able to respond to the baby as she or he might, sometimes empathy fails to develop. And you can catch it up at another time in life, but not through cue cards. It has to be through true relationships. So the baby helps the children find the humanity in itself. And finding the humanity in the baby allows the children to find the humanity in themselves. And that is the premise of how we move ahead with Roots of Empathy. We say to the children, you know, when the baby grows up and comes to school, how would you feel if people say, well, you can't play? And they're horrified. Well, we say, aren't we all just big babies? So the idea that we are all the one is central to this. We talk about differences, but we talk about our shared humanity, which is our feelings. And our feelings are what make us human. They're the connective tissue of humankind. So why empathy is so important? Well, I think it's probably the ultimate human trait. It's deeply connected to our morality. And the absence of empathy is at the root of all violence. It's at the root particularly of child abuse and neglect and domestic violence, and it's certainly at the root of hate crimes and genocides. And if little children can develop empathy in their classroom while they're having a good time around a green blanket. Why would we not do this? So the program scaled outside of Canada. We're now in 10 countries in multiple languages. We decided to do a great deal of research on this program since 2000. We've got research from 3 continents, and the good news is that when empathy goes up, aggression and violence go down. And the good thing also is that children become more pro-social. They include one another, they help, they share, they care. They behave in a way that makes them enjoy one another. And it's used very often in places, particularly in Europe, as the inclusion program rather than the anti-bullying program. Empathy is a break against cruelty. It's not a guarantee. But I think, you know, in school, children learn many things. I'm a great supporter of teachers. I think they're my heroes. But you cannot expect a teacher to take on the whole issue of emotional literacy. And I like to think that schools aren't just think tanks, they're also feel tanks. And when a child's experience in school is positive, the child is freed up to learn. And we find that the children in Roots of Empathy contribute in a very big way where they normally might not, because we come from a principle of intrinsic motivation. You only say something when you have something to say, not to impress anybody. So I'd like to finish up my remarks by saying that I believe childhood is a springtime of humanity. And if you can seed empathy in childhood, you can build a more caring, peaceful, and civil society. And that's a future worth planning for. And my final note will be a note from a song from the 70s that some of you might know. Strangers passing in the street, by chance 2 separate glances meet, and I am you, and what I see is me. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Angela, and I'm a philanthropist. To start, I want to take you back to the story of Canada's first community foundation, the Winnipeg Foundation. It began in 1921 with the generosity of a successful banker named William Forbes Alloway. Alloway gave a gift of $100,000, a staggering sum back then, to establish a foundation that would give back to his community forever. So the foundation is started, the story spreads, some newspapers cover it, there's some excitement. And then the excitement dies down, and the foundation waits 3 long years for its second gift. That gift is nothing like the first. It shows them a plain white envelope, simply marked the widow's mite. The package contains 3 gold coins worth only $5 each. We know nothing about the woman who made this contribution or what prompted her to slip $15 into that plain white envelope. But her decision to make that gift had a remarkable impact. With 3 gold coins, the idea that everyone can be a philanthropist was realized, and that idea has been the grounding of Canadian community foundations ever since. Every gift of time, treasure, and talent matters. Often when we think of philanthropists, we think of the likes of Buffett and Gates, and locally the Fountains and the McCains. And in our experience, rarely do the thousands of Nova Scotians who work to create vital communities recognize their contribution or the immense impact of their collective action. Aristotle asserted, "To give away money is an easy matter. It's in any man's power. But to decide to whom to give it and how large and when, and for what purpose and how, is neither in every man's power nor an easy matter." It's in any person's power to give away money. I agree. To give money, time, and talent is in any person's power, but smart philanthropy is a different matter. To have meaningful impact is a different matter. So let me tell you about one way it's being done here in Nova Scotia. The Community Foundation of Nova Scotia supports a network of community funds. These mechanisms for investment are designed to capture charitable gifts, large investments and small investments from local people who understand the power of pooling resources for local impact. Through these funds, everyone can contribute to a legacy for their community, and through these funds, local action and leadership is mobilized. After all, local community members know their communities best. I'll share 2 examples. First, the Yarmouth Area Community Fund. This fund grows year over year with contributions of $20, $200, $2,000. As the fund grows, so does its impact. And each year, the local fund leadership team asks community, how can we help? And then grants to charitable initiatives that often reach people most affected by inequality through the work of local charities. Second example, the Citizen Network supporting the Lunenburg County Community Fund takes a different approach. Their understanding of the underpinnings of social challenges in rural communities led them to focus on economic development and to leverage philanthropic investment to chip away at the root of problems. This year, Lunenburg citizens pooled their resources in an innovative experiment designed to turn the tide on the trend of decreasing population. With no population base, there's no tax base, no resources for schools, for hospitals, all of those things that are essential to vital communities. Working with the CFNS, the Lunenburg team hired a population growth coordinator and sent her off on a cross-country tour, trailer in tow, to promote Lunenburg County as a place to work and live. She arrived home with over 300 follow-up contacts from people interested in everything that Lunenburg has to offer, and importantly, a strong idea of what it might take to keep people in a community in the first place. These 2 examples have at least 2 things in common. First, local people realize the role that philanthropy can play in creating stronger, more vibrant communities. And second, that the mobilization of philanthropy is a locally directed opportunity for communities to take control of their own destiny. But something is very different about them, and that brings me to the question of impact. In Yarmouth, the local leadership directs grants to address the outcomes of a system where not everyone is a winner. You could say that through supporting local charities, they are helping individuals realize their possibilities. The impact is more on the individual. In Lunenburg, the focus is different. The team sees the symptoms of inequality as well. Outcomes exasperated by the declining population, but they're choosing another intervention, one that aspires to a reversal of a trend so common in our rural communities. The impact might not be experienced by individuals in Lunenburg today, but there is the possibility that fewer will experience inequality in the future. Is either the better way? What would Aristotle say? Should we focus on shaking things up or addressing the symptoms of inequality that seem to continue to gain a foothold across Canada? That's the question we think about, and that's the question that our donors, people like all of you, think about when the conversation turns to impact and legacy. The answer may well be that both are the right approach. While systems change has been the mission of many philanthropic initiatives, is it not just as important to not lose sight of the people who are suffering today? The use of crowdfunding platforms to directly reach people in need is rapidly increasing. There is increasing demand for the ways and means to support just one person, just one family, just one group. Or maybe it's just that technology is finally enabling unmet philanthropic demand. In the Walrus magazine earlier this year, Andrew Trinanal, the CEO of Community Foundations of Canada, asked the question, is Canadian philanthropy ready for the future? Philanthropy has always responded to societal changes, and now as we face the possibility of self-driving cars, virtual reality, and automated investing, all in a time of rapid demographic change, how will we respond? Our philanthropic institutions must be ready to adapt, innovate as we've seen in other industries. Our local communities need to adapt. Local investment decisions need to adapt, and we need to continue to capture the catalytic power of philanthropy and the power of local decision-making in a globalized world. How will we ensure smart and strategic philanthropy throughout Nova Scotia, across Canada, and globally in a time of disruption? That's the question I leave you with. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Keith McIntosh, and I'm here to talk about work as an agent for social change. There's a parable in a book I once read. It's something like, if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he'll eat forever. Almost true. What if there aren't any fish to catch? What if he's standing in the middle of the short grass prairie? Or in Vancouver's downtown east side? Or rural Nova Scotia? Or northern Canada? To make a real social impact, what you do has to be sustainable. Philanthropy, sorry Angela, isn't enough. Training someone and then turning them out into the same world that they came from to make a living isn't enough either. We have to provide a way to find the fish, we have to get that fish to market, or we have to bring the market to the fish. In 2015, I was lucky enough to be part of the Governor General's Canadian Leadership Conference, which is an event that brings 250 people from all across Canada together, mostly type A personalities, smashes them together for 2 weeks to learn about Canada, to think about some of the challenges, and to try and come up with some solutions. There were a few issues on my mind in that coming out of that conference. The Truth and Reconciliation report was released. It brought the very real issues facing First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada to the attention of all Canadians. And that report highlighted corporate Canada's responsibility to help. At the same time, in the Maritimes, and in Brunswick in particular, we had and have an aging, shrinking, migrating population. We have increasing healthcare costs, a decreasing workforce, and ever-growing deficit. And the issue that had most impact on me at that time was that in the IT industry, we have more jobs than we have people to fill them. IT jobs are really unique. They're not tied to a physical location. They can and will go wherever the workers are. So these are the problems I was thinking about, and I realized that I had a solution. The fastest growing demographic in Canada right now is young Indigenous people, exactly the people that we need in IT careers. The majority want to stay in their communities, and there are 15 First Nations in New Brunswick. But they're not entering the IT workforce. What are the barriers that keep that from happening? Well, education is one. So we created a training course that would prepare them for entering the workforce. We made it short enough that they could see the end. We made the entry requirements as achievable as possible, to be as inclusive as possible. We made the course directly applicable to the work that my company does, which is software testing. Another barrier I've found is location. Many Indigenous communities in Canada are not close to major urban centers. And like many of us, Indigenous people do not want to leave the communities that they grew up in. Family connections are very, very important. So we offered the course in or near their communities. A third barrier we found is employment. How do you get a job if it is located in a city far from home? How do you get a job if you have to compete as a complete outsider in a world with people who have more experience and more education and more connections? A very good friend of mine, a member of the Pasqua First Nation in Saskatchewan, told me a story of walking down a city street thinking he should apply for a job in one of the great tall buildings with the big signs with famous companies on top. But he didn't know anyone who worked there. No one who looked like him had ever worked there. How could he possibly work there? So we created a company that would hire the graduates and give them their first full-time employment in IT. That company is called Plato Testing, and it tests software for companies around the world. LinkedIn in Los Angeles, Intuition Publishing in Dublin, Ireland, Suncore in Calgary. The work can come from anywhere, and it can be done anywhere that there is an internet connection. It is being done in rural New Brunswick and downtown Vancouver right now. So now we have people working full-time in professional jobs. What does that change? For the employees, it gives stability. It allows them to stop worrying about tomorrow's meal and start thinking about a plan for the future. For their communities, it brings new money into the community and the economy of that community, but more importantly, it provides visible success stories and role models for their youth. And for the youth of those communities, it provides hope, it provides incentive to stay in school, and provides options. And for Plato, it provides a workforce to produce necessary and valuable work product and to grow a profitable software testing company. I believe that I can create 1,000 jobs testing software in Canada. There are many other opportunities in IT, in things like call centers, data migration, content validation. There are many entry-level, high-volume tasks in IT that are suitable for this type of a company endeavor. If Amazon sets up its new headquarters here in Halifax area, there will be more. I chose to focus on Indigenous Canadians and helping them, helping to solve some of their challenges. But the concept can be applied to any marginalized community. I've been approached by an organization representing unemployed coal miners in West Virginia, and another working with inner city youth in New York City. There's an entrepreneur that I know in San Francisco who's teaching women in Africa and South America to do data entry tasks. And then she's bringing work from Amazon and eBay and Microsoft to those villages in Africa and South America. I believe in order to change people's lives, you need to do more than give charity dollars. You need to create good outcomes, and you need to change the circumstances. You need to give opportunity, and you have to help people take advantage of that opportunity. Albert Einstein said we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. There are many government organizations and programs that will give money for training, and I say thank you for that. And there are many companies offer to sponsor courses and mentor their students, and I say thank you for that. But it's not enough. We have to fundamentally change the approach. I truly believe that corporate Canada takes the responsibility to help with the Truth and Reconciliation requests seriously, but they don't know how to engage. To this, I say, let me help you. Let me give you the opportunity, and let me help you take advantage of that opportunity, corporate Canada. What we really need is work, real work that needs to be done. We need you to carve out a bit of work that might otherwise go offshore or to a large corporation and give it to people who just need a chance. Honest pay for honest work brings dignity and pride. And dignity and pride changes lives. So give work. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Rosemary Lonis from Helping Nature Heal. So I manage and run an ecological restoration company that sort of looks like landscaping sometimes. And so how does social impact find itself in my company? Well, I think that for a few things, we run our business through the sustainability model. So we're always looking at three factors: social, environmental, and economic. We try to filter all of our projects through this process so that we know that we're touching on our key goals. Our mission being to reconnect people to the nature. I say the nature because it's the most important thing to us as humans here on this planet. If we don't have clean food, water, places to play, places to read and wonder and vision, have vision quests, what are we about on this planet anyway? We need to have these things to sustain our needs. And we need to be able to wonder and envision, imagine, and wander through our lives in connections to all these people that we get to meet all the time. There's several hundred of you standing in front of me today, and I don't know any of you yet, but hopefully we will. Getting sustainable and being social have a really great tie at Helping Nature Heal. So what we do a lot is hire young folks, challenge them, give them great opportunities. Sometimes it's fun and sometimes it's painful. But it's all about our socialization into a world that's ever-changing and that we really don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So this idea of helping nature heal, connecting people to the land. When people are connected to the land and know where their food comes from, that it's safe to play on the grass outside at the park, that it's great to drink the water coming out of the lakes and rivers, when we know that we're safe in our environment, then we can be sustainable. We can rest our worried minds. We can achieve some of our hobbies and goals. And so sustainability finds its way in all of our aspects of our life. When we're thinking about restoring ecosystems, we think about how is the human connected to the land and why for such a long time we've been disconnected. We have a raging problem around nature deficit disorder, something that has never, been mentioned 10 or 15 years ago. And all of a sudden we have people who are so connected to their technologies, to their fast-paced lifestyles, to whatever they choose to fill their time with, that they forget that they're part of the system that makes this whole planet work. So to remember that we are about this place and that we have permission to live within it and to change it perhaps, to make it better, to create and be adventurers, is really where we can find our deepest, most honored connections to the nature, and find ourselves within that. So when we're working with our clientele, and we see that they're, usually considering fixing up the landscape, or worried about their shoreline eroding, or the apple tree that needs to be pruned so that it has more fruit on it. I'm really wondering and trying to wiggle my way into their hearts and souls. What do they really need? Do they need that lawn looking perfectly so that they're not stressed out about the weeds? Do they need clean, healthy food that they can grow themselves and share with their friends and families and teach their children where apples actually come from? It's not a plastic bag at Save Easy. When we talk to little kids and youth and our young adults, and we ask them, what is their deepest longing? What do they remember the most? What do they crave? Mostly, they want to be able to be connected to their friends, connected to their social media, to all of the awesome technology. And I say, okay, if we could solve that challenge, what else? Well, what else do you need? They need compassion, empathy. They need people that can guide them through their lives. They need healthy lifestyles. And inevitably, it comes back down to the nature. They need connection to nature. It's where we find ourselves. It's where we can make some social change, and we can have a really deep impact. One of the stories I like to tell is about one of our clients who comes from far away, and they arrive at the airport having flown for many, many hours. They jump in a cab or a rental car, and they drive to Lunenburg County. They're rushing, the 103 might be under construction or have all kinds of challenges upon it. They drive into their yard, finally arriving at the summer cottage. They look around outside the windshield and everything as it should be. They step out of the car and they stand on lovely tiny pea gravel that kind of sinks as they walk into it. And as they walk and approach their cottage, they see the beautiful gardens, they see the land not eroding into the ocean, they see the trees beautifully pruned, having fruit on them. They see shrubs and flowers, and they feel like they're at home. There's a sense of safety and security there. They open the door and enter this second home for them, and they feel as though they've arrived. And so when we think about the impact that that has on this family and this couple with their children, they've flown probably 24 hours to get there. They've done all kinds of hoops and hurdles to get the funds, to get the timing, all of these things organized. Our social awareness prepared and ready to be on vacation at the cottage. And so they get there and all things are fine. And so this sinking in, this view of the beauty, the aesthetic appeal, the nourishment they reap from these landscapes impacts them in very deep, profound ways. We've had people hugging and crying and loving us because of caring for all of those exterior sorts of things that really do impact their lives incredibly. I'm always so grateful to them for sharing their notions and their experiences coming from a stressed out life into that relaxed space, because it tells us that we've arrived. We've made that and we've made the answer to their questions of their social impact. At Helping Nature Heal, we're always striving to connect to the nature so that we can really fully understand who we are, who our neighbors are, and what our place is on this planet. When we become part of our ecosystems, once again, we can then reabsorb that energy that we've been deflecting off of us. Even under our feet tonight is a lot of concrete, and we're not attached to the nature, right? When was the last time you walked in nature barefooted and really took the time to listen and smell and feel and wonder about what's going on in your life? Helping Nature Heal can really do those kinds of things, and I hope that this evening you'll take a moment to think about how does your nature, your personal nature, need to be healed, in what way, in what form. It might be very subtle or very aggressive or very extreme. Think deeply about that. How can you reconnect to the nature, find yourself once again, and heal all of your challenges, and see that the opportunity is on the other side of that challenge. I really encourage you to stop by and chit-chat with us later on this evening. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Upton, and I have a large family. I'm a really fortunate man. I work with a talented and passionate group of people, loud group of people. And we collectively are trying to run 3 companies that's sole goal is to really try to change the world. And a number of those folks are here tonight, and I just want to say thank you for what you bring every day. So tonight, I'm not going to talk a lot about my businesses, the businesses that we all are trying to run, but there's 3 of them. Common Good Solutions exists to start and grow and connect social enterprises, to build an ecosystem to support that kind of mission-based work. So Social Enterprise Institute is an online learning system that's actively leveling the playing field between urban and rural, between the first world and the third, when it comes to accessing expert technical assistance and training and coaching on how to start businesses that have a mission. The Bisocial Canada company is building markets. It's working with governments and large corporations to slightly change their supply or their purchasing supply chains so that they can purchase from social enterprises that create jobs for the most marginalized people we have in our country. Our companies are partnered with national and regional and international organizations, nonprofits like the Social Enterprise Network of Nova Scotia that exists to advocate for the sector in Nova Scotia on a regional basis. With the Canadian Community Economic Development Network, we do this on a national basis, and the Social Enterprise World Forum, we're doing it in countries all over the world. I teach a course at the University of Fredericton in the Sandberg School of Business. I teach social enterprise in the MBA program. I'm a member of the Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada Social Innovation Committee, and I'm currently working on a project with the Canadian government and people from across the country to create policy around social innovation and social finance in Canada. So that's all I want to say about the businesses and our stuff, except that we're trying really hard and it's growing. What I wanted to talk about tonight was maybe a little bit more about the future, and I was really pleased to hear about, I think the future is a thing we need to spend a little bit more time talking about. So, okay, my wife said I shouldn't do this, but she's not here. So the folks down on the right, that's the whole CGS family and the bus for the documentary that 3 young people that work with us took across the country this year, shooting stories about the kind of work that's going on in every community in this country. Those other 4 fabulous people are my grandchildren. So my wife said my speech, I could use all the help I could get, and showing pictures of cute kids. I was going to throw a puppy in there, but I thought it'd be going too far. So I have 4 children, and I have 4 grandchildren. 2 of those kids are growing up in Nunavut. You can guess which 2. What I'm thinking about these days is I'm worrying about sort of the 21st century version of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. You know, led by poverty and climate change. I'm worried that that's going to steal the quality of life that I hope they have. So when I thought about this speech, I guess I want to start with our responsibilities as I see them as citizens. I don't know how to explain to someone how they should care about other people. Personally, I'm happy to pay 50 cents extra for a fast food burger if it means the person making it for me can afford to feed their family. I mean, I guess if you're not willing to fork over that extra little bit for that reason, then you're just a fundamentally different person than I am. If I have to pay a little bit more with each paycheck to ensure that everybody can access a working healthcare system, sign me up. A few years ago, there was a story in a local paper here about a homeless man who was living in a cardboard box. And the story talked about how the man had a dog that lived with him. The man was his sole friend, loved and cared for that dog. What struck me in the follow-up to that article was the number of letters and comments written on the online version of the newspaper bemoaning the plight of the poor dog. I don't know how to convince somebody how to experience the basic human emotion of empathy. But there's something screwed with our values when the uprise is all about the puppy. So I can't have another conversation with someone who is content to see other people suffer needlessly in exchange for a system that gives wealthier people advantages, mostly at the expense of the poor. I don't want to debate with anybody. I don't want to debate someone into caring about what happens to their fellow human beings. So the first point I'm going to make tonight, and first I'm going to start with a quote. Jane Austen said something. She said, "I was quiet, but I was not blind." I would suggest that most of us aren't blind, but a lot of us have been quiet. So my first recommendation, the one that I'm going to try to follow, is that we all commit to being better human beings. That we be present. That we less bystanding. And that we start to think about the fact that how we spend our money in our society right now largely defines who we are. I've always been proud to be a Canadian. You know, it's safe to say that being a Canadian has always had an element of, we aren't exactly like Americans. You know, we flatter ourselves that we're kinder, we're funnier, sure as hell we're better hockey players. And often, you know, it comes from us being slightly envious of our bigger, snazzier Southern brothers and sisters. And I think this is the part that's important. We've always been a little bit smug because we like to think of ourselves as being more caring for those amongst us who are less fortunate. So spending some time preparing for this presentation caused me to think about that question and to question how much kinder and more caring we really were. In fact, you know, I wonder if we're not a little too quick to pat ourselves on the back. Here's an example. I'll give you, imagine if the residents of Bedford had unsafe drinking water for the past 20 years. Or their citizens there were struggling with extraordinary high levels of cancer. Or even that perhaps the infant mortality rate was sometimes rising up to third world levels. Imagine what the conversation we'd be having about that as Canadians. Today, there are 133 health advisories in place on 89 First Nations reserves, warning that the water is not safe to drink. We all know this. We all read the papers. 50 reserves have struggled with unclean drinking water for extended periods of time, sometimes for years. We're not measuring time in years here. So I travel quite a bit, and I'm always pleased to tell people I'm Canadian. And I badly want to be proud of my birth country, the country that helped launch the United Nations, whose citizens wrote the first draft of the UN Declaration of Rights, who gave insulin to the world. Our gift, Canada's gift to the world, is caring. We've been a beacon of hope, a sign that we all can be better. But I worry sometimes we've lost our way, that maybe we don't believe in our inherent goodness and that we started to lose that distinct caring characteristic that gave us our identity in the first place. So here's my second recommendation. All of us need to try to be better citizens. We have and should be demanding and expecting support from municipal, regional, provincial, federal governments to create initiatives that care for people who need to be cared for. It's not that we can't afford to do it, it's that we can't afford not to do it. It's the last piece, and I'm going to get in big trouble here, but because I'm running over. While my presentation today has been mostly about this, I really want to talk about business, and not about business. I want to talk about business as an extension of oneself. So sort of the notion of what I do is who I am. I don't think those things can be disconnected. I think the business is personal. It's personal for the people who work with me and with you. It's personal for the people who buy our products. It's personal for the communities in which we do business. It's very personal. So before I sound like too much of a tree hugger, I want to say that for the record, and I like tree huggers, I want to say for the record that I like profit. We work hard to make money. I like profit a lot. Profit is life as a business. People say all your energy must be focused on maximizing your return. You know, that you need to make a lot of money before you help anybody else. Well, I'm going to compare profit to two of my other favorite things: good tequila and potato chips. So for those of you who might know me, there are a few things that I like better than a good glass of tequila. And I love potato chips. Standing between me and the potato chip bowl at a party, could be hazardous to your health. But imagine if from now on, I decided that because I love tequila and potato chips so much, I was only ever going to eat potato chips and drink tequila. I mean, I'd have tequila for breakfast, I'd wash it down, I'd wash down my potato chips at lunchtime with more tequila. I mean, it's a ridiculous notion. I worry that businesses fall into that same kind of trap. That profit as the sole motivation for a business is as unhealthy as potato chips and tequila would be for me. I know the arguments about how hard it is to make money. I've used a bunch of them, and I've lived more than one of them. But here's what I believe. I believe that business can be the change that the world needs. I believe that our planet's best chance for change is with business. And here's why. Smart, determined people run businesses. People who get things done, keep their eye on the ball, who don't quit easily. Those are the people who tend to be successful in businesses. And that's what we need right now. But businesses have to do better. The days of maximizing profits at the expense of people on the planet have to end. If a business can't pay a living wage to someone, it's not a sustainable business, period. If a business destroys part of the environment through the sale of its goods and services, it has to be held accountable and to pay for that. We must reward good behavior. So what we business owners do is hard, but so is working for $12 an hour. Business owners deserve a pension. That's been a lot in the news lately, because we all work pretty hard. I know I do. But our workers work pretty hard too, and they deserve the same benefit. So here's my last point. Business is personal. It's important to remember if you own a business that your values are constantly on display. And you want to try and make your kids proud when they know you run a business. So in conclusion, and I'm carefully not looking over there, our society needs all the parts working in sync to succeed. Citizens, governments, business, but we have to get in it. We have to. What can I do, and what can we all do is to commit to being better people, to being more involved citizens, to being better business operators, to be mindful of our workplace, to be mindful of the businesses we own and the ones we purchase from. Demand excellence, care more, try harder, and most importantly, try to be the person that you'd like other people to think that you are. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Deborah Dickey. And on the screen behind me are some of the community members who come together each day at my place of work. But before I talk more about them, I want to talk about the place where these community members come together. For anyone who's familiar with the concept of the third place that was popularized by Ray Oldenburg, you'll know that the third place describes the social sphere that is separate from our home, being the first place, and our work being the second place. Oldenburg characterized the third place as neutral ground, where the main activity is conversation, where both regulars and new people visit, where food is often shared, and where participation is not dependent on socioeconomic status. It is free or at least inexpensive. This description of the third place is much like the space where these community members come together each day. Other third places might be libraries or cafes. Historically, barbershops and hair salons have been active third places, and it is said that it was there that the civil rights movement was born. Third places satisfy our need for relaxed socializing, and they create space for intellectual and creative engagement. I became interested in the idea of place a number of years ago. On its own, the idea of third places and their potential social impacts are interesting enough. But for me, the idea of place becomes particularly interesting when considering socioeconomic status. Many of our social and cultural activities require payment to participate, and anyone with children in sports knows this. So it's the added layer of social exclusion due to lack of income that makes the third place crucial to all our communities. But the significance of third places goes deeper. I was recently reading about the consequences of not having the means to participate and contribute to social and cultural activities. This document referred to this as the exclusion from social production. The word production was interesting to me. It goes beyond considering income and whether someone can afford to join a particular activity. Instead, it speaks to the fact that all people need meaning and purpose in their lives. People flourish when given the chance to be producers as opposed to solely consumers. We all have some degree of need to create and add value to our surroundings. The challenge for many people living on the margins is that there are few opportunities to be in a social sphere that embraces the value they can bring to their surroundings. 2.5 years ago, when Dartmouth Family Center, where I work, opened the Community Food Center, we were unprepared for the way in which the characteristics of the third place would intersect with the lack of opportunity for social production that people had been experiencing. We were inundated with community members who wanted to do more than participate in a program or receive a meal, despite the barriers they faced to participating in mainstream activities. They wanted to be behind the scenes, making food, growing food, fixing things, cleaning spaces, running programs, contributing ideas. And that's what they did, close to 200 of them in the past 2 years. People want to add value to their surroundings, and that's what's made our space inspiring, relevant, and often colorful. One of those community members is Peter. Before the food center opened, Peter knocked on the door holding a paper with his phone number and let me know that he could be our cleaner. I had never met Peter before, and at that time I wasn't looking for a cleaner. But Peter was persistent, visiting and asking several times a week. Soon, Peter was referring to his job and asking if he would need a uniform when he started cleaning. For several months, I would say, "Remember, Peter, we're not looking for a cleaner right now," and he would go on his way. Finally, the time came when we needed a cleaner, and I thought, I better hire Peter. Not because I knew he was good at cleaning, he didn't even have references, but because somewhere along the way, I too had started thinking of it as Peter's job. Peter's persistence illustrates that need we all have for a place that allows us each to contribute. I distinctly remember another conversation I had with a woman who has struggled much of her life with opioid addiction. She described with desperation in her voice how she just wants to feel like she has a purpose. I remember her saying everyone needs to feel like they have a purpose. Third places create the conditions for this to happen when circumstances exclude you from mainstream activities. Like most organizations, we regularly collect impact data, and there's one question that I find particularly interesting. We ask community members if they think their participation at the Community Food Center is important to other people. Most recently, 93% said yes. They show up because it's important to someone else that they do, and that is purpose. So I invite you to think for a moment about your own social spheres or the third places in your communities. What place outside of home and work do you benefit from and contribute to? Maybe it's a club, or maybe it's a regular neighborhood potluck that you take part in. Is this place somewhere that all people, regardless of income and ability, are currently benefiting from and contributing to? And if not, how do we make room? So back to these folks who interact at the Community Food Center each day. When I asked them if I could use their picture for this talk, I also asked them to tell me about the give and take of this place. In other words, how do they benefit and how do they contribute to this third place? So I want to end with their words. This is Amanda, and she said, "I received support from a large circle of people, and I've gained confidence. I also pass along what I know, and I share my life experience." This is Peter, who, by the way, helps clean every Friday. He said, "I get really good food, and I give my help. I'm a good helper." And I would add that he's a master of persuasion. And lastly, this is Carolyn. She said, "I learn new recipes, and it keeps me mobile. I give my volunteer help and my friendship." Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, let me hear you. My name is Sylvia Hamilton. Please think with me for a moment about the lingering effect of brilliant artistic work on our lives. A song, a painting, a novel, a short story, a poem, a photographic image, a textile, a dance performance, a film. A work that stirred your heart, ignited your imagination, took your breath away, challenged your assumptions, your view of the world. Do you remember when that happened to you? That's the influence of the arts, the power of the imagination. My ancestors, the Black refugees of the War of 1812, had imagination in bucket loads. Otherwise, you would not see me here. They imagined a life beyond chattel slavery in Georgia, a different world with freedom, peace, dignity. Imagined for themselves, their children, and for me, a grateful beneficiary. They acted on what they could imagine. Why is it that after a certain age, we suppress our imagination? We don't think about it, don't use it, because it's not rational. It makes us appear weak, childlike. But rational thought and the imagination are twins. The social effect of creative works on people shouldn't be underestimated. The work shifts us, a full turn, half turn, quarter turn, but moves us nonetheless. That shift, that moment when we see, when we feel something different, demonstrates our imaginations at work, our imaginations unlocked. The arts call us to a higher place, one transcending age, gender, geography, language, race, ethnicity, the many boundaries we set up. Our souls and spirits are nourished, are enlarged by the artists and their work that touch something very deep within us. Their creative imaginations enrich our lives, call our attention to injustice, influence us to understand, to be empathetic, to be informed, to be affected, to create new visions of the world, to connect us to each other. Whose responsibility is it then to nurture this vital creativity in young people, to challenge them to use their imaginations throughout their entire lives? Our imaginations allow us to think beyond ourselves. We can only attempt to change the world if we can imagine it. If we can unlock and harness that power to imagine the possibilities, we can change both our own and the circumstances of other people. Be bold in your imaginings in these troubled times. Words, ideas transformed into action. Let me give you a poem, Waiting for God. Walking in Shelburne where the graveyard sits, eyeing the courthouse, where the Anglican church looks from the other side of the road, come to worship, leave to serve, in paradise or in hell, who can choose? Job asks, shall we accept good from God and not adversity? Here are the dust-caked children of Palestine, digging in the rubble to find grandma's book of stories, the baby doll and carriage, the old football, the radio. They look to God asking, where is our state of grace? In Chibok, Nigeria, a father sits clutching his daughter's torn picture. He wept, like they say Jesus did, John 11:35, the shortest verse in the Bible. Why did they steal his girl? He longs for her to be alive in the Sambisa forest. Beside his bed, her name on a lined page, torn from her scribbler. Repeats her name every night in a whisper till sleep overtakes him. He will not eat, his wife says. Sunrise, he sits on a small chair stationed outside the door. Last night, when he went to bed, a truce. He made peace with death. We were young. We were young together. Once it was alone against the sky. Which side of the road do you want to be on? You asked. The history side or the other? Which side of the road are you on? Do you want to be on? Wait until that bend where the roads meet at the switchback. Sure, it's never easy, I said. Do we reject wrong only to think about right? But let us not compare atrocities. Let us not be consumed by guilt. Let us press our faces to wounds of history. Let us open our hearts to songs of justice, to words of peace. Our fearless imagination will keep us steady, honest, and strong. Poet Audre Lorde said, quote, our silence will not save us, end quote. Our imaginations transformed into actions will. Be courageous. Please, go find your key. Thanks for listening.
I apologize for the coughing, Jag. That fisherman's friend was not my friend. Not my friend. I'm very sorry. So there are 7 perspectives on social impact. Please join me in thanking all at once our talkers, Mary Gordon, Angela Bishop, Keith McIntosh, Rosemary Lonas, David Upton, Deborah Dickey, and Sylvia D. Hamilton. Woohoo! As I mentioned, this is our 85th Walrus Talks tonight, so do the math, 85 times 7. That's how many Walrus Talkers there are on many different topics on our YouTube channel. They're all, except for David, 7 minutes each. It's okay. Give me back your drink tickets right now. You can listen to those, watch them anytime when you're having your coffee or whatever it is that you do. They're free and on demand, just like the rest of the world. You can watch them there at thewalrus.ca. And at thewalrus.ca, you can also subscribe to the Walrus magazine. Yes, you can, but it's way easier to do it tonight. Catherine is out there at the table, and unlike the Globe and Mail, we're national, and we still deliver to the Maritimes. Yes, we do. It will come right to your door, and if you subscribe tonight, Catherine will, for an entire year, give it to you for $25, and she will even give you a Walrus sticker. It looks like this. You too can be the Walrus, so please, it's hard to be Canadian if you don't read the Walrus. Like, seriously, just get the magazine. And while you're there, you can sign up for our newsletter so you know when we're coming back to see you. I would like to thank Cecilia and everyone at RBC for your extraordinary support. I know Keith is coming for you, so be careful at the reception. Thank you, RBC, very much. I also want to thank our national partners, Shaw, Inspire, Shirk, and AMIA Aeroplan. They're with us wherever we go, and we're very grateful. Now, audience, if you could stick with me for another 52 seconds, I am going to ask our talkers to up, and come on, up you go. Go, go. They're going to go out to the reception first, so you don't do that weird thing where you trap them. You go too. Where you trap them in the front row and try to talk to them, and then they can't get a drink or anything. So they're going to meet you at the reception out there. When you come to meet us at the reception, after you visit Catherine and subscribe, you can also meet one of our editors who is here with us tonight, Vivian Fairbank. Vivian, where are you? Vivian, stand up so the people can see you. Vivian is here to meet writers and get story ideas, so if you've got one, there she is. She would love to meet you. You can also meet the Walrus Director of Events, David Leonard, who's famously from Dartmouth. Woohoo! And his parents are here. Where are the Leonards? Hi, Mom. There are David Leonard's parents. You can meet them too. They're awesome. And our friends from Adventure Canada are here tonight. If you go and visit them at their table, they do really neat things like the Northwest Passage and circumnavigate Newfoundland. They, if you fill out a little ballot tonight, you can enter a chance to win one of their amazing, amazing trips. So, reception, there is food, there is drink, and if you are there, there will be good conversation because the truth is, you are the Walrus. Thank you for coming. Safe home.